Here's a question that haunts us, you know? It pops up again and again throughout history. Do the ends justify the means? To get to the heart of it, we're going to take a journey from the fancy parlors of 19th century Paris all the way to a major political crisis happening right now.
Think about that for a second. Imagine your own goodness, needing someone else's permission to exist. It's an unsettling thought, right? And it's our starting point today because it really makes you ask, who gets to decide what's right and what's wrong?
Okay, so our first stop is the glittering but very strict world of 19th century Paris. We're diving into the famous novel La Dame aux Camélias, where we meet a woman named Marguerite. And her life, well, it becomes this huge moral battleground.
So here's the setup. You've got Armand, a young guy from a good family, and he falls head over heels for Marguerite, who's a well-known courtesan. In their world, it's not about who you are as a person. It's about your social rank. That's what decides your moral worth.
And this is where it all comes to a head. Armand's father, terrified for his family's reputation, goes to Marguerite and gives her an ultimatum, really. He asks her to sacrifice her own love and happiness to protect his family's so-called honor.
The wording here is so important. He's not just asking her. The book says he uses moral force. He's basically weaponizing ethics, telling her that her sacrifice is for the greater good of his family. He's trapping her, forcing her into a calculation where her happiness is on one side and his family's reputation is on the other.
So this very personal, heartbreaking story, it's actually a perfect window into a much bigger, more powerful philosophical idea. It's a way of thinking that has shaped and continues to shape our world.
And that idea is called moral consequentialism. It sounds complicated, but the core of it is pretty simple. It basically says that you judge an action, any action, only by its results. If the outcome is good, then who cares how you got there? The ends, as they say, justify the means.
All right, buckle up. We're about to jump forward more than a century. We're taking that 19th century ethical problem and applying it to a really complex, modern-day political crisis. I'm sure you've seen it in the headlines.
And that brings us to this really tough modern question about leaders like Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. His rule has been linked to just devastating economic and humanitarian crises. So the debate starts. Is it morally right to forcibly remove a leader like that? You see the parallel? Just like with Marguerite, we're faced with this stark choice. Does the hope of a better future justify some really controversial actions to get there?
And you can see the two sides of the argument pretty clearly. On one hand, the consequentialist argument is pretty compelling, right? If removing one person could make life better for millions of people, how could that not be the right thing to do? But then there's the other side, which says, hold on, aren't some actions, like intervening in another country's affairs, just plain wrong, no matter what good you hope will come out of it?
So you might be wondering, okay, what does a fictional 19th century courtesan have to do with any of this? Well, her story actually points out a huge, dangerous flaw when you only look at the world through that consequentialist lens. Let's just remember the basic rule for a consequentialist. It's all about the final score. The result is the only thing that matters when you're deciding if something was right or wrong.
Now, think back to Marguerite. In this society that was just built on appearances and lies, she was actually the most honest one. Her love for Armand was real. Her intentions were pure. You could argue she was the most moral person in the entire story.
And yet, she was the one who was sacrificed. Her happiness, her life, was considered a totally acceptable price to pay for a greater good that someone else got to define. She wasn't a person anymore. She was just a pawn in someone else's moral game.
So when you put these two stories, Marguerite's and the modern political dilemma, side by side, wow, a really deeply unsettling pattern starts to emerge.
And this is the heart of it, isn't it? When you boil morality down to just a simple cost-benefit analysis, people stop being people. They become numbers in an equation, bargaining chips that can be traded away for this idea of a greater good.
This all leads us to a really profound and kind of chilling insight. The biggest dangers we face, they don't always show up with a loud bang.
No. Sometimes the most insidious evil comes disguised in the language of morality itself. It whispers justifications in your ear. It tells you it's okay to sacrifice a few for the good of the many. It uses the very idea of doing the right thing to excuse causing incredible harm. And there it is. Our two worlds collide. A fictional woman from a novel and a very real political leader. They're separated by more than a century, but they are tied together by the exact same timeless question.
Can a noble goal ever truly wash away the stain of the things you did to achieve it?
So we'll leave you with that to think about. When morality becomes nothing more than a math problem, a trade-off, what then is the real value of just one single human life?